Hello and welcome back to another episode of the For the Property Investor podcast. And we're here with the weekly news with the only man who can bring us the news. Although he's in a strange, different location today. Nick Bendel, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Oh, you noticed my different location. I am actually on Norfolk Island, which is about 1,400 kilometres off the east coast of Australia, kind of halfway between Brisbane and Sydney in terms of latitude.
Right. I thought you transported back into the sort of late 70s kitchen environment there.
No. But definitely gotten some design tips for my own home. What's interesting, there's a population of about 2,000 people on the island. It's a beautiful place. And there are a couple of real estate agencies, and I was looking at the listings in the windows, and I was surprised by how expensive the homes are here. There are a few homes for sale for 7 figures, and there are some commercial properties for sale for 7 figures. There are also homes for sale for kind of 400, 500,000, but definitely a more buoyant property market than I would have expected.
Wow. And did you talk to them about requiring any of your services while you're there?
I did
To do any
not.
copywriting services?
I did not. I don't know how how lucrative the Norfolk Island copywriting market is. I did also notice there is a finance business. I can't. I think it's a financial planning business. They might also do some mortgage broking. I did see an accounting business. There is a Commonwealth Bank as well, and there is a big sign in the door with the local kind of home lending professional. So there is a bit of a finance and property market going on here.
So, although it's a small island with a small population, it's still a buoyant, vibrant real estate market there, it sounds like.
Yes, certainly more so than I would have expected. And this is just a beautiful place and really enjoying it.
Right. Well, you could have set it up with the view of the island or the mountain or the bay or something.
You don't like the fridge and the sink?
Well, it just doesn't speak Norfolk Island.
Oh, okay. Well, this is an authentic Norfolk Island sink and fridge.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. But that's all right. You can post some photos later, hopefully.
Okay. Well, one thing I can say is the ocean scenery is wonderful, and no one will be surprised to hear that there are plenty of Norfolk Island pines on the island.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's I would hope so because that's where they come from. Yeah.
If they're not here, where else would they be?
Yeah. It's I suppose you would be importing Norfolk Island pines to Norfolk Island.
Well, that's
Yes.
maybe something we can discuss in another episode. But anyway, I know you always like to ask me what I've been up to over the past week. What I've been up to since we last spoke
But besides
is,
Norfolk Island.
well, that's been the highlight. I'm lucky that I can do my business from anywhere. I can work from anywhere. So every quarter,
Yeah.
I take a 2-week working holiday somewhere. I do all the work I would usually do just from a different location. It's remarkably refreshing just being somewhere new. And it's wonderful being on Norfolk Island. So yesterday, for example, I did a full day, and I also went and visited a lookout, which has incredible views over the island. And I went and visited the place where Captain Cook arrived in 1774. The island was uninhabited at the time, although I believe Polynesian people had visited it in the past.
Okay. Interesting. And have you got any work done while you're there?
I have been extremely productive.
Okay, tell us about that.
Well, it just involves me being at a keyboard, going like that, For those who are listening rather than watching, my fingers are typing on a keyboard, and it also involves having a lot of Zoom meetings. So just the things I would normally do at home,
Okay.
but now Hunter and Scribe's global headquarters has shifted east to Norfolk Island.
Fantastic. Good to hear. Well, been a busy week for us as well in Leifield. We've actually been busy interviewing and hiring some new staff, and to be able to cater for our growing business and needs. So all of our clients will be happy to hear that, I'm sure, and as well as our referral business partners. So yes. Have you brought some news for us this week, Nick?
Oh, I've definitely brought some news with you as my camera has turned itself off. So I'm going to talk to
That's all
you
right. We
and
can still hear you. We can still hear.
I'm going to try to fix my camera at the same time while that is happening. And let me talk and just play for time while that is happening.
Well, good to see you can do two things at once.
Yes. I think something is about to happen with my camera. I think some good things are about to happen with my camera. This is one of the joys of working on an island. Things don't always go to plan.
That's all right. And some people might argue that it would be a good thing that something might happen with your camera.
Oh, that would be cruel. Those would be cruel people.
I know they would be, but at least we can still hear you, Nick.
Okay, I'm gonna unplug the camera and plug it back in, and we will see what happens there. Now, if that doesn't work, well, I'm all out of options.
We'll just have to listen to you.
Okay, well, I think we're going to have to listen to me for now, and I hope
All
to
right.
restore vision
If the
soon.
camera comes back, I'll consider it a bonus.
Well, thank you very much. Our first story today, property market bounces back. Australia's housing market is back in positive territory, with CoreLogic's National Home Value Index rising 0.3% in February. That broke 3 months of negative or flat growth and means the national median price is now just 0.1% below its previous high in October. CoreLogic Research Director Tim Lawless said rising buyer confidence is supporting prices. Expectations of lower interest rates, which solidified in February, look to be flowing through to improve buyer sentiment, he said. Okay, Owen, what are we to make of these CoreLogic figures? Can we say the downturn is over, or is this a short-term blip and the downturn has further to go? Or was there never a downturn and we just overreacted when prices declined a little in late 2024?
Oh, three very good options there, but I'm going to say it's a bit of all of the above. Um, it's yeah. Can we say the downturn is over? Well, we can never really predict more than 3 months ahead. So for the moment, yes, it's steady as it goes. We're not really picking a direction. We got a fairly neutral market, so yeah, let's be happy about that. We don't need more drama in our lives, at least for a little while. Yeah, is it a short-term blip and the downturn has further to go? Who knows? There's a lot of things to happen. Yeah, the inflation could blow up again, and then there's a further downturn, and interest rates could go up. With all these tariffs that are talked about all around the world, who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, there was definitely a downturn. Was it really just a bounce off the ceiling? A bit of a hard bounce off the ceiling. Yeah, we have had an extraordinary amount of growth in many of the capital cities for many years, and yes, we need to see prices come back a little bit. It was probably to be accepted. So to be expected. Sorry. Yes.
Tim Lawless thinks expectations of lower interest rates are strengthening buyer confidence. Does that sound right to you?
Oh, yes. The feedback we've had from our referral business partners are showing that there is a bit more spring in the step of the buyer out there in the market. It's definitely not setting any records, but there's just more activity and more interest. So, yes.
Hmm. And looking ahead a little, do you think the national median property price will be higher at the end of 2025 than the start?
I think it will be, definitely, especially seeing that I would expect that Melbourne would be the standout this year to be able to get some growth, which is well overdue. And I think most of the other capital cities will either hold their prices or get modest gains. So that will bring up the median overall.
Well, speaking of a rebound, let's move into our second story today. Australia's economic growth rebounds in December quarter. GDP growth rose from 0.3% in the September quarter to 0.6% in the December quarter, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. That means annualized growth rose from 0.8% in September, which was the lowest we'd seen since the 1990s recession outside the pandemic, to 1.3% in December. In another positive sign, the household saving ratio has increased over the past year from 2.8% to 3.8%, its highest level since September 2022. So that suggests households are in a stronger financial position, which could support spending and growth in the months ahead. Now, Owen, what about this news? Are you surprised that economic growth increased in the December quarter, given all the gloom and doom about the economy?
Um, well, the Christmas holiday period usually sees a bit of a bump in economic growth, so it's not surprising from that point of view. But it could have gone either way. It
Hmm.
means that other parts of the economy are holding up better than expected, and it's and it's a good thing. We want growth. We want modest growth, which it still is, and it's better than having a negative. And yeah, so if we can get that balance of growth, inflation, and interest rates right, then uh, that's the ideal world that we're looking for.
So I was going to ask if you had any theories as to why economic growth may have increased. You mentioned increased spending over Christmas. Any other reasons?
Um, it's I think with the uh, optimism of any possible rate cuts coming through, um, the overall consumer sentiment might be a bit more positive. Um, there's share markets around the world, especially in the US, have been doing well. So there seems to be a bit more positivity in the out there in the market, but probably a bit more cautious. So than years gone past.
Ironically, the stronger the economy grows, the less likely there are to be further rate cuts because the RBA wants to keep a lid on inflation. So
Yes.
if the economy is growing on the expectation of future rate cuts, and that in turn reduces the chances of future rate cuts, well, it's just irony upon irony, I suppose.
Yes, and that's where it needs to be a balance between those three economic measures or indicators, and it's a balancing act. We want growth, but we don't want inflation to be too high, and we want to have interest rates that are helping growth, but without fueling inflation. So yes, it's a balancing act.
Now, one interesting thing in the GDP figure. So, as mentioned, GDP increased 0.6%, which is another way of saying that our economy grew 0.6% in the December quarter. But you would expect our economy to grow because our population grows. So even if productivity remains flat, the economy is going to keep growing. Interestingly, though, in the 7 previous quarters, GDP per capita had gone backwards. So in other words, the pie had gotten larger, but economic growth was occurring at a slower rate than population growth. So the pie was getting larger, but everyone's slice was getting smaller. But in the December quarter, GDP per capita growth increased by 0.1%, ending a run of 7 negative quarters. So I'm wondering, Owen, have we solved our productivity problem? Can we declare victory?
Well, it's a slight victory, and yes, maybe that's as a result of the slowing population growth, and we're now able to take advantage of the new population and figures and the economy that's performing well. And yeah, so it just seems like we've had the soft landing that we're all starting to look for. Now that we've softly landed, we now need to start moving forward cautiously.
So our first 2 stories, property prices are up, economic growth is up. Our third and final story is going to involve something else increasing. Our headline is Australians love mortgage brokers. Mortgage brokers originated 76% of all new home loans in the December quarter, according to Comparator. That is the highest market share in history for mortgage brokers. By contrast, broker market share was 71.8% 1 year earlier and 69.3% 2 years earlier, showing how quickly brokers have been gobbling up market share. Owen, you used to be a broker, so you're
Yes,
very, very plugged into this world. Why do brokers keep increasing their market share?
because they add value, and they add value to their clients, and they add value to their clients, and they add value to their clients. Is there really anything else to really point out? Borrowers love brokers because they get value from them. And what do banks provide? They don't provide value. They provide the products, and yeah, so really, the banks are just becoming providers of products, and with no real upfront service or value to give, because it's obvious the public is voting with their feet, which is the way it should always be. And so it's surprising looking at these figures here. It's each year it's increasing by 3 to 5% in terms of market share. I remember when I was mortgage broking and we hit that 1/3. It's like brokers have got a 1/3 market share. It's just like that was huge. Now it's over 3/4, which is amazing.
Okay, so brokers are at 76% now. Do you think they're going to get to 80%? And if so, when?
Well, it seems like it's obvious that we'll get to 80%. And I think in a few years' time, we'll be talking about 85 and 90%. As I've said before, when we've discussed these figures, I think it might be difficult to really get much beyond 90%, because there'll always be reasons why borrowers need to deal directly with banks. And so it's but yeah, for brokers to have right now over 3/4 of the market in terms of borrowers, and it continuing to grow, I am sure. Yeah, there's no reason why we won't get to 85, 90%.
Well, I know you're bullish on brokers. I know you love brokers. And so you mentioned market share might get as high as 90%. I was expecting you to say it might go as high as maybe 105% or 110%, knowing how bullish you are. But you're thinking, no, maybe 90 is the upper limit.
Yes, we're not. Yes, it would be good if we could get 110% of the market share, but I wouldn't know where that extra 10% would come from, though. Yeah.
Well, that's a very good question. Maybe pushing on to Norfolk Island, Lord Howe Island. These are maybe unexplored territories for the mortgage broking industry.
Yes. Maybe we just need to take over other countries and get their market share. It's like, yeah. Well, maybe we could make New Zealand our what would it be? Our seventh state?
Oh yes. uh, these are rather sensitive times with Trump and Canada being the 51st state. So I don't know if we want to talk about our Kiwi friends being the seventh state. I am reminded of, I think, was it Roger Muldoon, the Kiwi Prime Minister, who mentioned there was a flood of Kiwis moving to Australia, and he said that raised the average IQ of both countries.
Oh yes, we love our Kiwi cousins, and we love to poke fun at each other. But yes, it's interesting. But that's maybe where we could get that extra 10% from, because there's sorry.
Well, maybe instead of New Zealand being the seventh state, maybe Australia could become the third island of New Zealand.
Yes, well, I have heard them refer to us as being the West Island.
Yeah, there we go. So we've gotten it all
Yes.
wrong. New Zealand is not the seventh state of Australia. Australia is the third island of New Zealand. Definitely something to think about.
Yes, but yeah, but then what's Tasmania? I mean, isn't Tasmania bigger than New Zealand all put together anyway?
This podcast is rapidly going off track, so it might be best if we wrap things up there.
Oh, okay. All right. No worries. Yes, we do love our Kiwi cousins. So hello to any New Zealanders that are listening. And yes, I hope you've looked after your sheep overnight.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment at all. Wonderful to chat again, Owen. I'm going to be on Norfolk Island next week, and hopefully my camera works. Yes, I will be.
Well, it's I'm glad to hear, and maybe we could have for if the camera's working, we can have a view of the bay, or nice island view next week.
Well, I will do my best, but then I would have to be outdoors, and then there would probably be complaints about I can see things, Nick, but I can't hear you due to all the noise in the background.
Oh well, we can't have it all our way.
Well, thank you as always for the chat, Owen, and I look forward to speaking again next week.
Great, fantastic. We'll hopefully be seeing you next week, Nick.
Bye.
All right.